Hello hockey fans and welcome back to another video. During the 21-22 NHL season, there have been tens if not hundreds of players that have been placed on waivers during the first half of the year. Whether they were called up temporarily to replace an injured player, they were reassigned to the minors after being involved in a trade, or they were mutually terminating their contract with their team, there are a number of reasons why a player has joined the waiver wire so far this year. However, of all the players to be placed on waivers, no one has had it quite as bad as Adam Brooks. Whilst the majority of players will find themselves on waivers once or twice in a season, Brooks has hit the waiver wire on 4 separate occasions during the first half of the year. While this total seems pretty surprising in and of itself, what makes his situation even more unique is that Brooks has been claimed by another team every single time, meaning he has joined 4 different NHL organisations during the first 4 months of the season. Talk about an eventful start to the year! So who is Adam Brooks? Why has he been placed on waivers so many times, and why has he been claimed just as often? Well, let's take a look at the forward's career and try to figure it out, shall we? So in today's video, join me as we explore the many claims of Adam Brooks. Let us begin with a brief overview of Brooks' career in order to understand how he has reached such an unusual point this season. The 92nd overall pick of the 2016 NHL draft by the Toronto Maple Leafs, Brooks would be returned to juniors for the following 16-17 season and spend the entire year with the WHL's Regina Pats. Having finished the prior 15-16 season as the league's leading scorer thanks to whopping 120 points in 72 games, the captain of the roster would somehow take his game to an even greater level, as the overager potted an astonishing 43 goals and 130 points in just 66 regular season games. After earning a place on the WHL's first All-Star team, Brooks would sign an entry-level deal with Toronto, turn pro for the following 17-18 season, and join the Leafs minor league affiliate, the Toronto Marlies. From there, the Canadian forward would spend the next 2 years exclusively with the Marlies and make great strides forward in his overall game. Though he would score 19 points in 57 games during his debut year with the team, Brooks would double his point production during the following 18-19 season as he potted 21 goals and 40 points in 61 AHL games. Not only that, Brooks would also get his hands on his first championship during this span, as his 6 points in 20 games during the 2018 AHL playoffs would help Toronto clinch their first Calder Cup in franchise history. Not bad for a 4th round draft pick, folks? The 2019-20 season would see Brooks begin the year on the Marlies roster yet again, despite attending the Maple Leafs preseason training camp for the 2nd consecutive year. However, after starting the season strong, just a few months later on December 28, 2019, the forward would be called up to Toronto's roster and would suit up in his NHL debut. Though he would end up playing just 7 games with the Leafs and scored 3 points during that span, Brooks would put his newfound experience to good use, as he would return to the Marlies for the rest of the year and score at an even greater pace than the year prior, thanks to potting 9 goals and 20 points in 29 AHL games. Once his entry-level deal had expired, and having shown notable improvement in his game every year since joining the organisation, both Brooks and Toronto were eager to keep their partnership going for a little while longer. This mutual desire culminated in Brooks signing a 2-year, $1.45 million contract with the Leafs, worth an average annual value of $725,000 a season, on May 14, 2020. Though he would earn less money on his new contract than his recent rookie deal, the final year of this contract would become quite the adventure. The recent 2021 season saw Brooks split his time between the majors and the minors once again and get a slightly longer look at the NHL level. After beginning the year with the Marlies once more, Brooks would be called up to the Leafs on January 22, 2021, where he would score his first NHL goal that same night during a 4-2 win against the Edmonton Oilers. From there, the Canadian forward would end up playing 11 games for the Leafs over the course of the year and scored 5 points in the process, while also potting 13 points in 17 AHL games with the Marlies. So now that we know Brooks' career before this season, what's happened to him since the start of the year? Well, The current 21-22 season saw Brooks attend Toronto's pre-season training camp for the 4th straight year and look to finally earn a place on their opening night roster. Unfortunately, the forward would be unable to do so, as he failed to impress the team's coaching staff and make the cut yet again. As a result, the Leafs placed Brooks on waivers just before the season began on October 10, 2021, with the intent of returning him to the Marlies and calling him back up to the show if and when they needed him. However, the 25-year-old would soon be on the move, as less than 24 hours later on October 11th, it was revealed that Brooks had been claimed off waivers by the Montreal Canadiens. So after spending half a decade with the Leafs organisation, and after bouncing between the majors and the minors for the last 2 seasons, Brooks had left the only NHL team he had ever known and was taking his talents to Montreal. However, this move was only just the beginning. Having just been claimed off waivers, Brooks would join the Habs roster, look to make a strong first impression for his new team, and finally establish himself as a legitimate NHL player. After playing 4 games with the Canadiens, and after registering just a single point in that span, the former 4th round pick would be placed on waivers for a second time on November 16, 2021. Though Montreal were hoping that Brooks would be demoted to Laval, the forward would be packing his bags once again, as he was claimed by the Vegas Golden Knights the following day. From there, Brooks would move south of the border for the first time in his career and join an injury-riddled Knights team for the next few months of the season. However, after playing 7 games with the team and after scoring a pair of goals for his efforts, Brooks would suffer an injury of his own against the Anaheim Ducks on December 31st, taking him out of the lineup shortly after and sidelining him as a result. Having spent the next 6 weeks on the injured reserve list, and with several Vegas players having recovered from their own ailments, the Golden Knights needed to free up a roster spot and were no longer in need of Brooks' services. This prompted Vegas to place Brooks on waivers earlier this week on February 15, 2022. Having hit the waiver wire for the 3rd time this year, Brooks would end up returning to familiar territory, as he was claimed by the Toronto Maple Leafs the following day. However, Brooks' reunion with his former franchise wouldn't last very long. Having been claimed on February 16th, and with the Leafs eager to save as much cap space as possible ahead of the upcoming trade deadline, less than 24 hours after they had claimed him, Toronto placed Brooks on waivers again on February 17th. Having been placed on waivers by the Leafs for the 2nd time that season, and having hit the waiver wire for the 4th time this year, the forward would find himself on the move once more, as he was claimed by the Winnipeg Jets shortly after. I hope Brooks is on a frequent flyer program, because he's racked up some serious air miles this season. So after being placed on waivers for the 4th time in the last 4 months, the Manitoba native is heading home to Winnipeg after a lengthy trip around the league, and shall be joining the Jets for the foreseeable future. Hey, at least he gets to go home this time. Now, there's been a lot of discussion surrounding why Winnipeg claimed Brooks when they did. After all, since the waiver order is determined by the inverse of the league standings, and since Winnipeg are higher up the order than the Leafs, if the Jets wanted Brooks so badly, they could have just claimed him from Vegas on February 16th and beaten out Toronto. What this argument fails to mention, however, is that Winnipeg recently played a game against the Seattle Kraken on February 17th, and Jets forward Cole Perfetti was injured during the game. Since Winnipeg forward Andrew Kopp had also been sidelined with an injury the day before, the Jets didn't have a need for Brooks until after he was claimed by Toronto and subsequently placed on waivers the 2nd time. Just thought I'd clear that up in case there was any confusion. Also, some of you may be thinking, but Oddman Rush, isn't Brooks still injured? He hasn't played a game since late December, so why would Winnipeg claim him for injury cover if he himself is injured too? Whilst you make a very good point, dear viewer, I imagine that Brooks is either close to or has recently recovered from his injury and is able to suit up for Winnipeg over the coming days, or one of the Jets' injured players shall be sidelined longer than Brooks is, so they picked him up to replace the loss to their roster until then. Either that, or the Jets decided to claim a hometown player when they had the chance, to see if he could help the team turn their fortunes around and potentially stick around beyond this year. Given the struggles Winnipeg has faced so far this season, and given Brooks' limited yet respectable NHL career, bringing him home and seeing if he can earn his place certainly isn't the worst idea. So why has Adam Brooks been placed on waivers so many times this season, and why has he been claimed just as often? Well, if you ask me, his current reputation as a fringe NHLer and his ability to temporarily plug a hole in a lineup has made Brooks both a valuable, yet equally expendable asset. With 6 goals and 11 points in 29 NHL games over the last 3 seasons, Brooks has produced respectable numbers during his several stints in the show, but he hasn't done enough to earn a full-time gig. Sure, he's been a high-scoring player in the minors and has played pretty well in the NHL, but his inability to take his game to the next level and force another player out of the lineup has meant that he has only been used in the show as and when his team has needed him. Now, you could argue that since Brooks has bounced around so much over the last few seasons, he hasn't been given a real opportunity to prove himself at the NHL level, and there's certainly a case to be made there. But based on his performance over the last few years, it seems as if Brooks is too talented for the AHL, but not quite productive enough for the NHL, especially as a top 6 scorer. If Brooks was more of a physical, no-nonsense player who thrived in a team's bottom 6, then it's possible that he may have secured a longer look in the show, especially on a team like Toronto, who already has its top 6 all but locked up. But since Brooks has been a scorer at every other level he has played at, and since he hasn't quite converted his high-scoring talents to the NHL, he hasn't found a more permanent home in the league thus far. Though Brooks may not have secured a place in the show, his recent play has proven that he can certainly hold his own against the best of the best. Couple that with his team-friendly contract and his minimal salary, and this makes Brooks an ideal short-term replacement for an NHL roster. Whether they have a plethora of injuries and need someone capable to step in on short notice, or they want to shuffle some players around to best utilise their salary cap space, Brooks' reputation as a fringe NHL player and his cost-effective contract means that a team can claim him off waivers, plug him into their lineup for as long as they need him, and suffer minimal financial implications in order to do so. However, whilst this makes Brooks a pretty valuable asset for cap-strapped teams, and he can certainly find employment on an NHL roster, he is only able to do so on a temporary basis, as teams will be all too willing to place him on waivers once they are no longer in need of his services, and risk losing him to another franchise. Sure, Brooks being claimed so many times has meant that he has remained in the show and continued to earn an NHL salary for the entire season, but since he has only stuck around with each team for months at most and days at the least, being placed on waivers and claimed so many times in 1 year alone seems to be doing him more harm than good. After all, Brooks has been claimed off waivers 4 different times in the last 4 months. That doesn't exactly set him up for success, does it? So where does this leave us? Well, at the time of this recording, Adam Brooks was claimed by the Jets just a few days ago, and he appears to be returning home for the foreseeable future. Whilst it's certainly possible that Brooks could end up on waivers for a 5th time once Cole Perfetti and Andrew Kopp recover from their respective injuries, I really do hope that Brooks has seen the last of the waiver wire for the current season, and he is able to stick around in his hometown for the rest of the year. In fact, Brooks' move to Winnipeg could be the ideal situation for him, as it could present him with an opportunity to finally join the NHL full-time. Since the Jets are eager to make some changes following their underwhelming start to the year, and since Brooks has proven that he can make an impact in the show, the forward could end up finding a home on Winnipeg's roster, stick around for the rest of the year, and finally prove whether or not he should remain there for the foreseeable future. And what better place to do so than the city he grew up in? I don't know about you guys, but I hope that Brooks is able to stick around in Winnipeg for the rest of the year and complete his first full NHL season back home. After all, he's certainly travelled far more than most this year. And that was a look at the many claims of Adam Brooks. What do you guys think about Brooks' journey so far this season? Are you surprised that he has been placed on waivers so many times, or do you think that he'll be claimed once or twice more before the end of the year? Let me know in the comments below, I would love to hear what you guys think. But thank you very much for watching, guys, I hope you have enjoyed. Please feel free to like, subscribe, share, or watch some of my other videos. Thank you very much for watching, and goodbye! A big thank you to Drew Fawcett, Houston NG, and Worthless Pieces for helping support this video via Patreon. If you too want to help support the channel a little bit further, and get a shout out at the end of every future video, make sure you head over to patreon.com/oddmanrush and become a patron today.